What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, the government shutdown, which will happen today at midnight if they can't pass a bill in the Senate, in the House, and send it to the president's desk before midnight, which is a tall task to do. And we're quickly moving towards a first ever government default, which is where the government will literally run out of money because they will not be allowed to print any more money because of the government debt ceiling, which is basically a debt limit where they have to pass an agreement in Congress, either between the Republicans and the Democrats, which right now the Republicans are refusing to do. The Republicans have refused it on several occasions right now and are forcing the Democrats to raise the debt ceiling on their own through the reconciliation process. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said yesterday the Democrats cannot and will not raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation. Yeah, so this is a little bit hard to swallow. It's a little bit hard to conceive that the Democrats cannot and will not raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation. So the Democrats and the Republicans are going to have to either come to an agreement, or the Republicans are going to have to let the Democrats do a unanimous consent where the Democrats can raise the debt limit ceiling on their own with just the 50 to 51 votes. And basically, the Republicans will just step aside. They don't have to vote yes in the Senate. And the Democrats can then raise the debt ceiling on their own without a single Republican vote. But the Republicans blocked that just yesterday in the Senate. So we have a lot of work to do to raise the debt limit ceiling. But last night, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer have announced that they've reached a deal to avoid a government shutdown. Remember, a government shutdown and the debt limit ceiling are two different things. The government will shut down tonight at midnight if they do not pass a deal in the Senate, a bill in the Senate and in the House, and send it to the president's desk. Well, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced that they have reached a deal with the Republicans. And as of the time of this filming, they are actually going through the amendment process of this bill in the Senate. And here's a funny story. I was actually watching this live, and as I tuned in, I jumped into the live stream to see what was going on, and I seen no on the voting. I just jumped into the live stream and I started to see a bunch of no votes. And then I seen Chuck Schumer vote no. And it said, government continuing resolution. And I seen Chuck Schumer vote no. And I go, oh no. I go, the deal must have fell through. And I go, what could have possibly happened from last night when they had an agreement? And I go, oh my God, what is he going to even say in this speech on how this deal fell through? And how Chuck Schumer, because remember that a lot of times he's the majority leader, he'll vote no at the last second to reserve his right to re-vote on it again if it comes up at the last moment. But then I realized as I was watching, because remember I jumped in at this live stream on this voting process at the last, as it was in progress, that the Republicans were voting yes and the Democrats were voting no. And I go, wait a minute. How does that work? And then my wife jumped on to the actual, the Senate page and got more of the details, and she goes, well, that explains it. And I go, well, why don't you explain it to me, because I'm watching the votes here live and I'm completely confused. And she goes, they're voting on the amendments to the bill for this continuing resolution. And I go, oh, that would make sense. Yeah. So remember that this bill because you know how the government works, right? You can't ever. Rarely do they have a standalone bill. Very rare. Remember, they did have that one standalone bill for the Cash Act, that $1,400 stimulus check that was going to make it $2,000 that former President Donald Trump wanted. That was one of the few standalone bills that Mitch McConnell blocked. Yeah, eye rolling there. But most of the time, when they have a standalone bill, it actually ends up getting to have several other things tied to it. So this government shutdown bill actually has several other things added in there. It has disaster relief for Hurricane Ida and some disaster relief for Americans in there. It has refugee Afghanistan aid in there from people from Afghanistan that have now come to the United States for foreigners, which I don't believe should be in there. You can let me know your thoughts if it should be in there. Both Republicans and Democrats are in there. Republicans want to add over $1 billion in there for foreign aid for Israel for their Iron Dome, which again, what does that have to do with America? Democrats actually removed that from their version of a previous bill because a lot of Democrats didn't want that in there, so they removed that. Republicans want that in their bill. Maybe that was the amendment that I actually had to see. But nonetheless, they are moving forward on this bill. This would keep over 2.1 million Americans in their jobs today if they can get all this done today, if the Republicans and Democrats can agree on this and get it all passed here today. So they're in the process of this today. Also, as we move forward today, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I'll keep you updated on all this process today. It's a very big day. The bipartisan infrastructure bill process is moving forward here today. This is a very, very big one because, so is the government shutdown and the debt limit ceiling, which is the first ever default. Could affect Social Security payments, could affect military payments, could affect government funding, could affect literally the government running out of money. Can't make this up. And I get a lot of people saying in the comments, the government prints their own money. I get it. But the government is not allowed to print their own money without raising the debt limit ceiling. This debt limit ceiling kind of caps the government from being allowed to print any more money. And they have to print more money just to pay the debt, just to pay the interest on all the past debts from the last 200 years. Yeah, so it's not just, the government prints more money. They do, but they have to be allowed to do it. Yeah. So we also have this bipartisan infrastructure deal today, but are they going to vote on it? Nancy Pelosi says that she's not going to vote on a bill that will fail and could potentially embarrass the whole Democratic caucus. It could fail. It may fail. Here's Democratic Representative AOC to give us more perspective on why it may or may not be voted on and why it shouldn't be voted on, because the stimulus package should be voted on first.
Why is there an effort to link them both and make sure that the big bill doesn't get delayed indefinitely after the small bill passes?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you that a lot of this discussion about process and tit for tat just is very difficult to follow and doesn't really cover the heart of this conversation, which is that we have two bills at present, one which underfunds most priorities across the board. So there are very few priorities that even get the full funding that they even need. And then there is the larger, what is known as the budget bill, reconciliation bill. That has the stuff that you're going to feel in your everyday life. Universal pre-K. We're talking about college, community colleges. We're talking about expansion of Medicare. And we're debating including vision and dental in Medicare, conversations about lowering the age of it, robust climate action, renewable energy. All of that stuff that you're going to feel in your everyday life is in what is known as the Build Back Better Act, aka the Reconciliation Bill. Now, when we were discussing the scope of this bill way earlier in the year. This is the original infrastructure bill. And we have a vast majority of Democrats, about 96%, that are in agreement of the entire agenda. Now, a very small handful of Democrats, about 4% of the party, are trying to essentially split these two priorities up. You know, and I personally don't think it's an accident that the ones that a lot of lobbyists love are in the much smaller, underfunded bill that don't make prescription drugs easier to buy and more affordable, et cetera. And what they want to do is split them apart, force a vote on the first one. And because we have such narrow margins in the Senate and the House, you know, the read that we have is that they'll just dump the second one, leave the other one out to dry, and just never actually vote on it. And so the way that we bring our two parts of the caucus together is by saying, you know what? My bill is bound up in your bill, and your bill is bound up in my bill. So do I love this very, you know, what I would argue a conservative underfunded bill? No. But I will vote for it if we pursue them both together. But what we should not take is this approach, which is what people are trying to do by forcing a vote tomorrow on an under-considered, under-amended bill by itself, by saying, we want to force this vote right now, and it's either my way or the highway. You don't work together. I want your vote, but I will give you nothing for it. Your community will not benefit from this as much as mine will. We don't have to pursue that route. We can, instead of saying it's either mine or yours, we can say both of us can succeed together. And that is the case that the Progressive Caucus is making. But if we vote for this bill tomorrow, Rachel, and I want to be very clear about this, if we vote for this underfunded, too small infrastructure bill alone, instead of voting for it with the rest of the president's agenda, if we vote for it alone, it could make our climate crisis worse, and it risks being the only or the last substantive piece of legislation that we will pass. I do not believe, we do not have the assurances necessary to believe in good faith that reconciliation will pass if infrastructure passes tomorrow, because it gives that small, narrow margin of Democrats that have, you know, really been making this process quite difficult. You know, there was an overall agreement between the process 2 months ago, and then there was a reneging of that. And so if we can just stick to our original plan, stick to the promises we've made each other, we can proceed in good faith and transform the lives of millions of Americans for the better.
Do you feel optimistic that it'll happen?
I do feel optimistic because the Progressive Caucus, and not just the Progressive Caucus, but we are now seeing a lot more Democrats, even not part of the Progressive Caucus, join and say, you know what, childcare, healthcare, the climate crisis, this is too important to shelve. It's too important to shelve. And I also want to really thank people at home for supporting House Democrats who do not accept corporate PAC and lobbyist money. And those sorts of Democrats are not just progressive, they're not just conservative, they really transcend a lot of party ideology, but they're a recent phenomenon and that have really been surging since 2016 and 2018. And I really do believe that that is what is changing the dynamic that we're seeing in Washington today, where that stranglehold that lobbyists have traditionally had over Washington, that still very much do in a lot of sectors, is starting to loosen because everyday American voters and everyday people at home are starting to support members of Congress and send members to Congress that don't just do what lobbyists tell them to do, but say we're going to make tough decisions.
Meanwhile, it does look like they're moving forward with the vote on the physical infrastructure package. Senator Bernie Sanders, Congressman AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who we just heard from, are pleading with Democrats and progressive Democrats to vote no on the physical infrastructure package. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, has said in the past that she won't put a bill forward, saying this in general, that would fail on the House floor. But she has also said that she would put this bill forward. She said she'd put this bill forward on Monday, then had to delay it here to today. The question is, would she put this bill forward today just to satisfy the moderate Democrats and maybe this bill will fail? Will she put this bill forward and it pass? Will she put this bill forward and it fail? Would she put this bill forward? We honestly don't know if it's going to pass or fail. She could put this bill forward and it might fail just to satisfy her moderate Democrats. It's really a 50-50 at this point if it's going to even vote today, if it's not going to vote today, and if it does vote, if it passes or fails. Here's Nancy Pelosi with her latest statement. And remember that this physical infrastructure package is tied with the stimulus package. A lot of progressive Democrats don't want the physical infrastructure package to pass before the stimulus package because they think that if the physical infrastructure package passes before the stimulus package, that then the stimulus package has a much harder time to pass because they think that some moderate Democrats might then not vote for the stimulus package. So keep that in mind, that the stimulus package's fate is kind of bound with the physical infrastructure package.
So now you've come here about what else comes next. We have two items that were, well, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the BIF, and of course the reconciliation. I just told members of my leadership that the reconciliation bill was a culmination of my service in Congress because it was about the children, the children, the children, the children. Their health, it's about health, their education, the economic security of their families, a clean, safe environment in which they could thrive, and I guess a world at peace in which they could succeed. This is more about the domestic first poor parts of that. So remove all doubt in anyone's mind that we will not have a reconciliation. We will have a reconciliation bill. That is for sure. Today, the question is about we are proceeding in a very positive way to bring up the bill of the BIF, to do so in a way that can win. And so far, so good for today. It's going in a positive direction. It's impossible, though, to persuade people to vote for the BIF without the reassurances that the reconciliation bill will occur, and it will. And that we cannot, because of rules of the Senate in terms of parliamentarian having to pass on any bill before it comes to the floor and pass on any language, we cannot really guarantee what I'd hoped in terms of having a more legislative form, but nonetheless, the framework that if it's okay with the President of the United States, who has this vision for our country. As I've told you before, he said, I want to work on the bipartisan bill for infrastructure, but I will not confine my vision for America to what is in there. We have to build back better, and to do so in a way that honors our climate goals, honoring our responsibility to our children to convey this planet in a responsible way. That does so, that respects the needs of, the opportunities for working families with issues. It's all jobs, green technology, jobs for women in the workplace, dads who may need home help. All the things, child tax credit, child tax care, child care issues that relate to universal pre-K, home health services. If you have a senior or person with disabilities in your home, some of you know this, you've heard it every time you come here, but I just want to make sure that it is reinforced as to why this is important, because it's jobs for women, it's jobs for people who have been previously underrepresented. Build back better. So when you build the infrastructure of America, you're doing so with a workforce that has workforce development, can be involved in those decisions. And it has a justice to it that the president has insisted upon, that we're not building in ways in the past that have separated communities and perpetuated environmental injustice, but instead build back better with justice.
So yeah, really big day today. We have a government shutdown that's going to happen tonight at midnight. They need to pass a bill in the Senate and in the House and send it to the president's desk to prevent that. They have an agreement, apparently, between the Republicans and the Democrats, if they can get that done. And they can agree on the amendments. You know how the Republicans and the Democrats have been lately. So if they can do that, I'm not holding my breath. Trust me, I'm not holding my breath, but I think they're going to get it done. We'll see here if they have it done here by our next video at 8 p.m. That will prevent over 2 million regular Americans, non-elected officials, from losing their jobs. Over 1/3 of those people make less than $40,000 a year. These are average, everyday Americans. It will prevent a government shutdown, vital services across our country from shutting down. Very, very good thing to not have shut down. Also, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is moving forward and it's expected to be voted on today. It could be delayed if it's going to fail. Nancy Pelosi could make that decision. We'll have to see. I will keep you updated on all of this. The stimulus package is in the fate of that bipartisan infrastructure bill. A lot of progressive Democrats, Senator Bernie Sanders, who's in charge of the stimulus package, wants this bill to be delayed. He says, or he wants it to be, he's urging progressive Democrats to vote no if it gets voted on today. Just so that's what Senator Bernie Sanders is saying. So he's saying to progressive Democrats or to all Democrats that if it gets voted on today, to vote no, because Senator Bernie Sanders is urging Democrats to vote no because he wants the stimulus package to be passed first. Because from what he says, that the physical infrastructure package is a kind of insurance policy on the stimulus package. And both he and AOC and a lot of progressive Democrats think that if the physical infrastructure package gets passed first, then they lose a little bit of leverage for the stimulus package. So yeah, today's a very big day. I will keep you up to date on everything here. The stimulus package, the physical infrastructure package, the government shutdown agreement that has to pass today before midnight, or else we will see a government shutdown, and the really big issue, the government debt limit ceiling, which we will see a first ever government default, which we do not have an agreement on. Just to be clear, there's no agreement on that, and they are not voting on that today. That government shutdown they're going to vote on today. The government debt ceiling is not included in that. That's a completely separate issue. There's no agreement on that. They're not voting on that. The House has passed a bill on that, but only the Democrats voted on that. The Republicans are not in agreement on that. And right now, there's no clear path to passing that at all, just so everybody's clear on that. So right now, there's no resolution on raising the debt limit ceiling at all. They're still at a complete standstill for that. So I know this can get confusing on all of this, so I try to be as clear as possible. So there's no resolution on the debt ceiling or the government default yet at this point, but we're making progress. So really big day today. I'll see you guys in the next video at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't yet. It's completely free to do so. And you can click this video here to watch my newest stimulus check video next. You can share this video down below with your friends and family. And you can click this video here to see how Senator Bernie Sanders wants to add a $1,000 stimulus debit card into the next stimulus package. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.